Welcome to this week's episode of Gods and Monsters by E. King, read by me, E. King. Each week, MetaStellar is releasing a new episode of Gods and Monsters, both in print and on audio. Thank you for joining. And now, episode 28, Journey's End. Last week, Jackson discovered his brother's Jim's corpse. Jim met Christian on the banks of the river Styx, and together they rode into the afterlife. Chapter 83, River, San Francisco, 1985, Journey's End. It is the night after Jim's death. River and Jackson sit in Burt's. It's just past noon, long before Pam is due in for work. It might seem odd to be there in daylight hours, but the harsh fluorescent light and recycled air keep Burt's in a state of perpetual and natural twilight, like an intensive care unit or a casino. In Burt's, you can easily lose track of passage of hours, days, or seasons. The diner is 3/4 full, but the booth in the back, where River and Jackson sit, is secluded. They order a cup of the dingy brown liquid that passes for coffee. 2 of River's spiced muffins sit on a dish between them. Despite the soporific effects of scotch, Xanax, and brownies, Jackson looks haggard. His normally pink, meaty face is rough and darkened by an undergrowth of stubble. His small blue eyes lie in shadows. I don't know, Jackson begins, taking a bite of muffin. A lot's been made of the most bizarre features of the case, but I can't help feeling like we're missing something. He takes a long teardrop crystal out of his front pocket, rubbing it in his palm. Iridescent tendrils of light weave between his fingers. There's the fact that the killer, or killers, targets gay men, but why? Is he just a sick homophobe? Somehow, I don't think the killer is specifically targeting gay men. I don't know why. No reason, really. Just a feeling. But I tell you, River, I've been doing this job a long, long time. Maybe too long. Jackson sighs. I've learned to trust my gut. I'm not saying I couldn't be wrong, mind you, but there's a lot more here than a homophobe on a rampage. The men have all had their blood drained from their bodies. He shivers. Damned if we know how. Yes, he says, holding up a fleshy palm before River can interrupt. There are those 2 small holes in the neck, but there's no way you could drain a body that way. The newspapers say, begins River. The newspapers, Jackson snorts. Vampires, he shakes his head. Stories to scare people and sell more papers. I never believed in vampires, and I still don't. It's just a frickin' press having a field day, playing on the fields of misery. That's what they do. Jackson purses his lips, blows a long exhale, and takes another bite of muffin. There's always chain marks around their necks, but no sign of bondage or restraint. And something else. I really shouldn't be telling you. We've managed to keep it out of the news. God knows how. And I've never revealed confidential information before, but for some reason, he breaks off. There are tears in his eyes. River's spiced muffins are rich, but not sweet. They've been mixed with baking soda, nutmeg, and trust, so it's no wonder that just a taste opens the hole in Jackson's heart. It's no surprise that a mere nibble dissolves walls of caution and uncertainty. They all have another mark, Right here on their neck. Jackson points to the hollow in his neck. At first, we thought it was a scar, but they all have it, a white stain like a tiny icicle. My buddy Slim Ferguson, the night watch at the morgue, says he's never seen the like, and he's been there over 40 years. Jackson returns to Crystal to his breast pocket. We're keeping the bodies at the morgue. Usually we get rid of them after a day. But there's another thing about these corpses. They don't decay. At first, I thought it might be the lack of blood. But no, the coroner said that shouldn't make no difference. Flesh is flesh and rots, blood or no blood. It ain't like we plumbed them full of formaldehyde or anything. And they smell different, sweet, but not a good sweet. It's hard to describe. Jackson shudders and takes another bite of muffin. It's like a decaying flower. It smells more like death than rotting flesh somehow. God knows I shouldn't be telling you this, River, but I can smell it in my dreams. Chapter 84, River. San Francisco, 1985. Jackson. After his meeting with Jackson, River goes to JoJo's. Although he sinks his hands wrist deep into rich white batter, smooth as water, he cannot relax. The almond cookies that usually emerge, fragrant as autumn leaves, burn to a crisp. River crumbles them into bite-sized morsels and scatters them into the alleyway, but even the hungry pigeons that roost over the bakery refuse to eat them. The fragments disintegrate slowly, darkening the pavement with regret. That night, Jackson does not come to Birch. Guess he must be on duty, says Pam. I hope he's okay. I feel real sorry for him. I know what it's like to lose someone before you had the chance to tell them what was in your heart. It makes the missing so much worse, almost as if you caused it, even though you know. Her voice trails away, her eyes filled with tears and unspoken words. It isn't until the next morning, on the way to JoJo's, that River sees the paper. Policeman killed in Castro. The headline stops River in his tracks. The body of policeman Edward Jackson was discovered this morning in the Castro district. His body had been drained of blood. 2 puncture marks, 1.5 inches apart, marked his neck, exactly matching the profile of the other victims. He had not been on duty. Eddie's brother had been found the night before, said his partner. He was pretty broken up about it. It's not like Ed to go off alone. Chief of Police Martin Avis summarized Officer Jackson may have been on a private investigation. It is not the policy of this department to send out lone officers. We can only assume that Officer Jackson was acting out of grief. It is a tragedy indeed. He was a fine officer. And a fine man. Officer Jackson was a member as FSPD for 35 years. He is survived by 2 children. He is the first victim who is not gay, that's been slain by the vampire killer. Is this a change of pattern, or was Officer Jackson hot on the trail of the murderer who has been terrorizing the city? River bows his head. A tear runs down his face. It sparkles like 1,000 tiny rainbows before splattering on hard pavement. Huck lands on River's shoulders as softly as if his claws had feathers. Jackson, he caws mournfully. Jackson. Nana sits before a navy blue cloth, tucking in the edges of the threads that Asia has severed. The same pattern, but all in all, not a bad ending, Asia says. Chapter 85, Jackson. On the banks of the river Styx, 1985, meeting across the water. Jackson waits on the banks of a cold, dark river. He sees a dim light that seems to beckon with ever-increasing circles of light. In the boat, a tall, dark figure holds out a skeletal hand clothed by a transparent glove of dark flesh. Without even thinking, Jackson reaches into his pocket. To his surprise, a silver and gold coin is inside. He's forgotten it was there. It's hot in his lifeless hand. It falls into the ferryman's palm, slipping beneath his translucent skin like a sunset. When Jackson steps into the boat, it doesn't even ripple. As the ferryman pulls his way into the endless dark, Jackson hears Jim laughing. He is smiling before he even reaches the shore. Chapter 86, River, San Francisco, 1985, The Labyrinth. River is walking in the hills above the Castro. The day is so beautiful, it sings. A wild sun peeps out from behind the clouds, swirling across screaming blue skies. A breeze runs soft fingers through River's hair, but he doesn't even notice. He's caught inside a labyrinth, following Jackson through night-dark streets. He is seeing a small white mark on pulseless necks. He is imagining corpses that do not decay. He is mourning his friend and trying to concoct a plan. He yearns for understanding. He craves revenge. He longs for justice, even though he is incapable of comprehending the crime. Death is so final. River will never again see him sitting across from his sleeping partner. Never note his face cracking into a smile at the sight of Huck. Never watch suspicion melt into confidence at the bite of a muffin. River feels his absence like hunger. There is nothing, no touch of a caress in the gentle wind, no whisper from beyond. River is discovering places in his heart that didn't exist until sorrow created them. Rio blows into his ear. Just because you don't see something doesn't mean it's gone. But for once, River doesn't hear him. His ears are blocked by loss. Huck lands on his shoulder, soft as memory, gentle as grief. Everything falls away in the face of death, River thinks. I didn't know I had a friend until I lost him. Don't die, Huck, River says, ruffling Huck's feathers. Please don't die. I couldn't bear it. Huck nuzzles River gently with his beak. Chapter 87, River, San Francisco, 1985, Whipped Cream and Responsibility. It's a week after Jackson's death. In Burt's, Pam and River lean toward each other, the counter between them. I love that hat, Pamela, River says. It's like a dollop of whipped cream. Me too, Pam replies. Someone I loved very much. My nanny's sister had one like it a long, long time ago. I always coveted it. If I'd been really good, I was allowed to wear it. It seemed so grown up and respectable. River laughs. Funny, I never thought about being respectable when I was a kid. When did you grow up? Having a nanny seems pretty high tone to me. Pamela smiles ruefully. Appearances can be deceptive. River looks into Pamela's eyes and swallows. She is so beautiful. The only people at Bert's, sitting in a distant booth, seem so far away that they might be alone. Alone in a place centuries remote from Bert's. A place where the harsh fluorescent softens into warm gaslight. A place where the glaring pink and orange walls ripple into mahogany panels and burgundy velvet. A place where rays of a phantom chandelier dabble the room with light. River takes Pamela's hands. They are white, bloodless with cold. How can your hands be so cold? They're almost numb, River says. It's genetic. I think a condition called Raynaud syndrome. Did your mom have cold hands? She might have. How would I know? She never touched me. My brother was the love of her life. He died before I was born, and she never got over it. She always hated me. Who could hate you, Pamela? I can't, I won't believe it. You are too lovable. Pam smiles and shrugs. Do you have any living siblings? What about your father? God, I know so little about you, and yet I feel I know you so deeply. Pam dimples. No, no father. He died before I was born. I come from a classic dysfunctional family. River laughs. Every family with more than one person in it is a dysfunctional family. What did your mom do? Oh, she ran a boarding house, was always busy, always working. That's why I had a nanny. There was nothing grand about it. I was pretty much neglected, relegated to the attic while Mama entertained. Next week, a woman is standing behind River, a stranger so dazzling and pale that his breath catches in his throat. Go quickly now, you haven't long. There is something familiar about her, and suddenly he knows. It's Lisa, but not the gawky Lisa of high school. This Lisa is ashen and gleaming, fragrant and ephemeral as the night blooming circus that flowers only once a year on a single evening. She lays a hand against his scar. It burns cold as ice. She smiles sadly. In the darkness, her teeth glisten, sharp and long as icicles. Thank you for joining us. See you next week.